Well, welcome everyone. I see some people are still trickling in here. Welcome to this month's Coffee and Cargo. We'll kind of start off with some intros. My name's Emily Smith. I am a project manager here at Interlog. I work a lot in the marketing department. I'm joined here with Ben Schwingle, the International Operations Director here at Interlog. Welcome, Ben. Great to have you as always. And today we are joined by a special guest, Anthony Wong with Sapphire Logistics. Ben, I'll kind of let you just take it over, give a more formal introduction of Anthony, and we can get started today.
Well, I will allow Anthony to do that himself. I will say that Sapphire Logistics and Interlog have been working together for many years, and it's our honor to have Anthony on today to really provide that local perspective from Asia, Southeast Asia, and he has friendships and partnerships all through the region. So he has some up-to-date knowledge on the conditions in manufacturing, finance, and logistics. I don't think we'll get a chance to cover everything today, but we have some topics we'll touch on, and probably some we'll get to just by way of conversation. Let's see where it goes. Anthony, you want to introduce yourself too, and Sapphire, a little bit about your company?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Anthony. I've been working with Ben, like you said, for a couple of years already. I've been in this business for quite a while, and these past couple of years were completely different from what we had experienced before, or what we may experience in the future. So even through our experience, we have never gone through this phase, and the problems that we faced, how we overcame these problems. And it's a pleasure to be here to share our thoughts, our vision for the future, and any questions that anybody has. Thank you.
Here we are 1 month away from the Lunar New Year, and I think it'd be appropriate to start the conversation off with this. Here in the United States, North America, we're about to enter into our holiday season where we are shutting down a lot of warehouses, manufacturing for a week stint starting this weekend. And this year, the Chinese New Year, the Lunar New Year, begins earlier than the past.
Usually the Chinese lunar calendar works differently from the normal, the Western calendar. So this year our New Year begins from January the 20th, which is the New Year's Eve, and the last working day for everyone, including the factories, anyone, is on the 19th of Jan. That's the last day. This year, it's different because we have a very long holiday. It's like totally 10 days, from the 20th till the 29th. Actually, it's till the 25th, but since the 26th is a Friday, it's been combined till the weekend. So it's been a long holiday. And usually, as per past experience, freight rates tend to hike up prior to the long holidays because the suppliers or the consignees, they want to have all their goods shipped out before all the factories close up. But this situation is different this coming year because of the current global economic conditions. So I don't know how it's going to play out this year. So we're just waiting for the first week of Jan to find out how the situation will be regarding the rates, the space, stuff like that.
Right. In the last couple of years and years before that, there was lots of vessel capacity or vessel sailings because there's so much demand. And it's also interesting to note that this is started on January 19th. Many years, Chinese New Year begins in early February.
Correct.
Between our holiday season and yours, that's just a short week, 2.5 weeks.
Yes.
Get cargo out of the factories into containers and into the terminal.
Correct.
Do you feel like there's a rush for bookings right now happening?
I have not exactly. I think the ones that they have placed, we see if there's a lot of bookings, the freight rates will jack up immediately.
Yeah.
But what's happening is that I have a feeling that there's more supply than actual demand. So this is one of the reasons why the vessels are skipping the vessels. A lot of shipping lines are skipping vessels to maintain, because the rates have already fallen. They cannot have it rock bottom. So to maintain the rates, there's been skip sailings, but we don't know how it's going to play out, because to the West Coast, we can still get a booking if we book at least a week in advance.
Yeah.
So I think it's still sustainable this year, which is completely different from the past.
Yeah, well, I remember last year's, there was even talk of Chinese factories staying open and working through the New Year holiday, just to catch up or to satisfy the demand.
Yes.
There was rumors that was going to happen again this year, but I have not heard any talk like that for the last 5-6 months. So I believe when the holiday hits, everyone will be glad to be taking a break.
You're correct. I think this year the factories, like some of them, I've been speaking to some of the factories or some of the suppliers. Some of them have not received any new orders. Usually they always get the orders at least 1 to 2 months in advance. So a lot of factories have not received the orders. Some of the factories have received orders for the whole of 2023.
Okay.
But all on hold.
Is that right?
All on hold, yeah. So this is another problem, not only for the factories, but for the logistic providers, because we don't know where the wind is heading. It may turn swiftly. So this is completely different ball game. Like last year, it was crazy.
Definitely.
Lots of demand, less supply. So it was completely crazy when I believe both of us know the rates to the US was hiking at 20,000 plus per container.
Yeah.
Now it's fallen down to.
But this cautious behavior we have now is reversal, even different than 2018 and 2019.
Yes,
It was steady
correct.
placement of orders in manufacturing. It's starting to sound like there's some concern by the manufacturers in Taiwan. You're watching the US Fed interest rate carefully to know what our trajectory is and to see where our spending may go.
Because this, you see, like Taiwan and most of the Southeast Asian countries, most of us are exporting countries, right? So we need to have our local currency higher in order for when they convert to the US dollar, it makes them favorable to export. Their products become cheaper.
Right.
But sometimes due to the fluctuation, a lot of factories, they lose money because they're selling at a certain amount. But due to the rate hikes and the constant fluctuation, and when they produce the goods, it takes about a month. And by the time they're ready to ship, the exchange rate, they lose a lot on the exchange rate. So this is one of the problems that they face.
Well, how much fluctuation have you seen with the US dollar to Taiwanese dollar in the last couple of months?
2 months, I think between 5 to 10%.
Okay, it's considerable.
Yeah.
Trending upward and stronger against the US dollar or weaker?
It projected lower, then it became stronger.
Oh.
I think because our central bank must be intervening to balance the currency, because they have to take care of the importers too, not only the exporters. We do have importers. So if they only take care of the exporters, they'll just let the currency slide. But then the imports face a problem because of the strong dollar.
Of course, right.
Yeah.
How is
So
this
they
affecting
just
the
have to do a
attitude?
balancing act.
How is this affecting the attitude of investors in China, Taiwan,
Cautious, very,
Vietnam?
very, very cautious, because uh, most of them have now, according to my friend circle, right? Because not a lot of people will disclose their personal financial situation to a stranger, but according among friends, a lot of them have put their financials into fixed accounts, like long term, 5 years, 10 years, just pegged it. So they don't lose money, though they make just a little margin, but they will not lose money even when the currency fluctuates.
Mhm.
Because one of my friends even tried playing the margin, like to peg it in the US dollar. But then he was not aware, and then the US dollar fell a bit, or I gained a bit. He lost quite a lot of sum of money. So most of them now are playing safe, going 5 years, 10 years, long-term deposits.
Mhm. And what
I
does
think
this mean for
this is going with
industrial?
a lot of businesses following this too.
Well, Southeast Asia has been rapid growth of industry, manufacturing. If I'm speaking just about China, it's seen a lot of expansion towards West and Central China, and even to a point where the cost of manufacturing in neighboring Vietnam was much lower than China, so factories were moving there. And then the
Okay.
tariffs also expedited that move of certain factories to Vietnam. What are the feelings there on the expansion from China to Vietnam for certain types of manufacturing?
Sure. Okay, I will start from China and then move down. China, all the coastal areas are developed, right? Shanghai, Ningbo, Beijing stuff. So the government has started giving incentives for factories moving inwards to Chongqing, Chengdu, these new cities. So a lot of industries have started moving there because of the new incentives. And of course, they are like, this is like a cycle, I have to go back to explain properly. Before, the powerhouse was Japan.
Okay.
All the factories were there. And when they come to a certain level, then they start moving out of Japan. And at that time, they started moving to Taiwan. All the factories started moving to Taiwan. So Taiwan started to grow up. So once Taiwan has become capable, the low-end products, usually they start with the low-end products like toys, shoes, garment factories, stuff like that, not the high-tech. So these started then moving to China from Taiwan. This is like a cycle.
Yeah, maybe this was like
Once
move from Japan to the Taiwan was in the 90s, and then Taiwan to
I
China in the early
I
2000s.
think earlier, a bit earlier than in the early 90s, maybe early 90s,
Oh,
early
okay, the
90s,
90s.
yeah, or maybe even in the 80s, I believe. And then from Taiwan to China, and now China has gone up. So all the low end moving to Southeast Asia, okay, to some moving to Thailand, some to Vietnam, Cambodia, Indonesia, and like the Cambodia, Vietnam, they are mainly for garments. All the garment factories are based there, garments and shoes. Of course, we have a lot of Taiwanese factories there. We have a lot of Korean factories there. We have a lot of Chinese factories in these countries now.
Of low
The
tech
latest,
stuff, though, right? I mean,
yeah, the low stuff, the toys and stuff like that. And then now we have been getting inquiries from some of our clients, factories, who are dealing in lithium batteries.
mhm.
They are planning to move some of the new factories to Vietnam because Vietnam, according to them, Vietnam has got now a special status, like a free trade agreement with Europe, or maybe have some special incentives from the States. So they're planning to set up factories there. They have asked us to do some research because to export out of Vietnam, either to Europe or to the US, percentage of the product must be manufactured in the particular country, like for example, like Vietnam. So we have been giving them all the details, like, okay, what percentage has to come from China and what percentage they have to manufacture there and then assemble it there and then export it. Then they will get this special tariff.
Right.
But this will take time, maybe a year, because to get all the supply chain into Vietnam and all the planning will take some time. But they are slowly moving, diversifying. I would say diversifying, not exactly moving. They're diversifying the supply chain in case if a situation like COVID arises again in future, they're not caught with their pants down.
Right. Well, it's dual
Yeah.
purpose. You diversifying the supply chain, your vendors
Yeah.
to countries. We saw the move to Vietnam and Malaysia of lithium batteries. It was right after in response to like the Trump tariffs, so-called Trump tariffs.
Yes.
So even if we don't have a special free trade agreement with Vietnam, if there's enough of a classification, an HTS tariff shift in the product,
Mhm.
the core is made in China and it becomes something different in Vietnam, we import it and avoid the 25%
Correct.
tariff. The country of origin is then Vietnam.
Correct.
I hear what you're saying though, like it takes a long time to establish those type of assets. And now that we're going on 4 or 5 years of the tariffs, it's starting to look like a long-term thing. I think
Mhm.
encouraging investors to really, well, like I said, both diversify the
Mhm.
supply base and establish some manufacturing plants in Malaysia, Vietnam, Cambodia. Is that felt through all industries in Vietnam, or is it just particular to lithium batteries and other mid-level tech manufacturing?
At the moment, we have received inquiries for lithium batteries because we ship out a lot of lithium batteries out of Taiwan. One of the biggest suppliers, it's called, in Chinese, it's like Dafang. So we export a lot of batteries for them. So any of their clients who gets in touch with them, they just tell them to contact us. So we're already in the planning stages for these guys. And not only this, the batteries, because batteries is part of what you're going to do in Vietnam. They're going to also move a lot of e-bikes, e-bicycles, right? They're going to move the factories, diversify the factories
And
there.
really popular here.
Yeah. So I think this is because they're thinking long term too, because due to the energy crisis, right, all over the world, I believe a lot of people are moving into e-bikes, like e-cars, e-bikes, stuff like that. Even now in Taiwan, the government is giving a lot of incentives if you go and purchase an e-scooter instead of a normal gasoline scooter.
All right. It's good. Yeah. Taiwan's always been known for bicycle production. So it makes sense. So you'd also be the ones and computer chips.
Yes.
Batteries, right? So
Chips is another headache for all the suppliers here in the tech industry. If I may go into this, because a lot of tech people, a lot of manufacturers, they all require a lot of chips. Okay, previously they used to hoard like stock up on a pile of chips, right?
okay.
But now, due to the fluctuation and the currency and everything, and the uncertainties in the market, they cannot afford to stock up on the chips because all the cash is squeezed there. So what they now do is when they get the order, then they order the chips. And sometimes the chips are out of stock, or the chips you have to get the correct deal. So when they get these orders, like all these computer manufacturers, right? They have a lead time of at least a month. That's the minimum, to 3 months. They have a lot of orders. Like I said, they have a lot of orders on hand, but they cannot produce it.
Yeah.
The lack of chips.
Is that a common lead time for most industries, or
If you see in the electronics and the computer industries, yes, at least between 3 months, sorry, the lead time they need to have the shipment, because all the orders are huge. It's not like a few computers, like it's a big order, right? So they need a lot of lead time for that.
well, thanks for touching on that, explaining the reason behind the long lead time. Kind of comes back to the cost of holding on to that large supply of chips,
Yeah,
which has risen, and the uncertainty in the market can mean your stockpile is very expensive.
correct.
No, I think we should also touch on COVID. There's been a lot of changes in
Uh,
China recently, and we're not sure what that means for Chinese manufacturing. The reopened, you should elaborate on how that
Okay,
came about in the last 3 months and where we go from here.
okay. COVID, when COVID started, I think Taiwan was one of the first countries, if I may call Taiwan a country, to close down all flights between Wuhan, where it started, to Taiwan. Not only the flights, even the people, even our own local Taiwanese people who are based in Wuhan, they were not allowed to return back in the initial beginning. So we were the
Yeah.
first to lock down. It was really at that moment, Taiwan was very safe. I don't think we had any COVID situation here for at least a couple of months. And then the government then started just operating, letting a few countries, I mean, only for transit flights out of
Yeah.
Taiwan, right? Not entering Taiwan itself. Then the COVID started here due to some pilots, China Airlines. Their pilots did not follow their COVID protocol.
I hear you. Can we speed up?
quarantine
I do want to fast forward to like the last 3 months, because Taiwan is relatively open and safe for COVID.
Okay,
China
now
has, yeah,
Taiwan is now pretty safe. We opened up, I think, last month. So everything is okay here, even though people wear masks, but I think business is as usual. And now going back to China, because we have a lot of trade between Taiwan and China. China is just opening up now. And there's been a huge jump in local infections there. But I believe the factories are moving in the right direction. Because if we look at in a business point of view, I think China needs the world and the world needs China. It's like, intertwined. So these problems that we've been having for the last 3 years, I mean, the whole economic problem, my personal view is that once China really starts kicking the business, all the factories starts kicking off, I think it'll be a spark for the world economy to jumpstart again. It'll be good for everyone, yeah.
I agree. There's some certain degree of symbiotic relationship there where we need China as much as they need us, but also the demand has dropped off so much from last year. But the
That's
type
right.
of commodity is made in China, and the manufacturing is moving to other Southeast Asian countries, and there's some degree of technology that we can only get from Japan or Taiwan. That is a question in China right now. Is it too late? Are they returning the manufacturing of goods that are no longer in demand like before? And what that means for logistics is that there's going to be less demand for supplying and less demand for consumption.
You see, a lot of Taiwanese factories are based in China, right? So even though the orders are placed in, like a lot of orders are placed in Taiwan, and a big chunk of that also moves from China, from these Taiwanese factories, but moving out from China. But when China was in lockdown or in partial lockdown or whatever, because some places were locked down and some places were not. So there was still some business moving. So see, freight, the whole Asia Pacific, the freight, when the market goes up or when the market goes down, it all follows the China's market trends. If the demand is low in China, then the demand is low all over, like Taiwan, Hong Kong, Southeast Asia, stuff like that. Because most of the vessels, if you talk about shipping lines, they move to China first, all the coastal places. Then they come to Taiwan.
Right, which is an
Because,
advantage for,
yes,
you would think it would be an advantage for Taiwanese shippers because it'd be the shortest transit time to the West Coast.
hmm
But I think you're alluding to the fact that maybe the Chinese can fill the vessels before it gets to Taiwan, take up the space. Is that right?
two factors are in play here. One, usually the freight rates in China, when the demand peaks up, it's always higher than in Taiwan. So the shipping lines, the airlines, they prefer space, allocating more space to China. Like before, when Taiwan did not have a lot of demand, there was a lot of demand from China, right? China Airlines and EVA Airlines, these are two Taiwanese airlines. They were allocating more of the space to exports from China. They were bringing stuff from China and transiting it from Taiwan at a
Okay.
higher yield, because our rates is a little lower than what they can offer. Because China is a huge market if you compare it to Taiwan. Taiwan is like, it's very small. So they have a big role to play in the freight rates. So this is one that affects the freight, and secondly, the demand. Only when China opens, then the demand will push up. Otherwise, there's more supply and less demand, and especially with all the new vessels coming into play. A lot of vessels have been ordered, and now like Yangming lines, the Taiwanese shipping lines, Evergreen, they have placed orders when they're supposed to get the new vessels next year, but the demand is not there. So this is a big problem.
I know we're gonna get near the end. I have to give Emily a chance to chime in too. There's the time for Q&As, but Anthony, what I'm really hearing, I wanted to just repeat here, is a lot of concern on your side about the U.S. Federal Reserve and how we're going to change our interest rates, because the U.S. we're second largest trading partner after China. Is that right?
Yes.
And they're also very intent on watching what happens with Chinese manufacturing and the demand of your.
I just to give you a brief idea, I pulled this file out from the government website. For the first 11 months, the trade volume, the trade revenue between Taiwan and China was about 2,515 billion US dollar for the first 11 months. And for the first 11 months, trade between Taiwan and the US was about 1,200 billion US dollar.
Oh, half, okay.
Yes. So you see, it affects a lot. And then the Feds, you mentioned the Feds. When the Feds take action, it affects the whole world, not only just the US. If the Fed makes one move, the whole world waits. Our stock markets depend on what happens on Wall Street. If Wall Street rises, then we know tomorrow our stock will rise. If this Wall Street dips, tomorrow we know we have a bad day at our stock market. So everything follows the American financial system, which is very important to all the markets in the world, I believe, all the currencies in the world, because all the government has to then catch up. And this affects interest rates, because when the Fed hikes up the rates, our federal bank has to hike up the rates. So, and it affects the people's life too, because all the mortgage,
Well,
office mortgage or house mortgage, all the interest becomes higher.
well, it comes back around and affects the importers, the ones listening
Yes,
to this
correct.
conversation right now.
Yes,
When the rates are low, the factories can be more confident and
correct.
stockpile material. And when it's
Yes.
high, the news, the good news is deceleration of the rise, but still a rise, means that there'll be longer lead times, less confidence and ability to stockpile the materials needed to manufacture. No, I don't think we can ever say in summary of this conversation. There's a lot of things you're talking about here. I'm not even sure if we touched on all the topics we planned to.
Yeah.
I know your
So
information's right there.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, just with time, we'll make sure to reach out to those who did submit questions. And Anthony's contact information is right here. I'll actually go back one slide and you can email him as well. Excuse me. A couple of things to note. Our next Coffee and Cargo webinar will be January 18th next year, 2023. If you would like to be put on the monthly webinar mailing list, you can email rachel@interlogusa.com. Anthony, it was great to have you on and to hear your thoughts and insights. Ben, always a pleasure. Any last thoughts from you two at all?
Lots of last thoughts. Anthony, I think I'm going to give me a call after this. I know it's late, so thank you so much for staying up with us tonight. It's after midnight for you. Real pleasure seeing you here, and we'll talk a bunch more. I'd like to have you back on again this coming year.
it was a pleasure. I'm just sorry that we could not touch on a lot of subjects that we planned on.
More to come.
Oh, yes.
Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Yes, thanks.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Yes.
Have a happy holiday.
Happy Lunar New Year.
Thanks.